don't have like a desk, so I'm like sitting on my couch.
Like I said, the more we do it, the more we can like figure out what works, what doesn't work, but just little by little. Most important thing is that you're here. Yeah. And I've got my dogs downstairs, actual animal dogs, not homies. And pour one out.
Yeah.
I don't know, introduce yourself, just a quick one so people know who you are. I mean, I guess I'll quickly just say, like, one of my good friends, we played college basketball together. You're actually the person that got me overseas professionally as well, and we were teammates overseas. Now, coach, fellow coach. So, yeah, anything you want to introduce or let people know?
Look, yeah, obviously, I never thought I would be a coach, I think is probably the biggest thing to say. Like, I was probably naive to think that I would always be a player. So, still young in this journey, really, and grateful for every opportunity that I've had so far, and definitely not done learning. So, this is another step to help people that has helped me, and hopefully, I learned something too.
Yeah, I was definitely hoping you'd like boost up your accolades. I know you're not that type of person, but just know you've coached very high levels, won a lot of world competitions with teams. Like you've been all over the place, had a lot of success. We'll probably do like a deeper dive at some point, but yeah, you're kind of
Yeah,
good.
look, I think no one wants to brag on themselves, but yeah, 7 national titles in Australia, multiple international tournament wins, whether it's club international or very lucky to be on Australian junior staff at some points, and hosted camps and stuff in Japan and all those types of things. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm accomplished by any means, but I've had a very broad range of experiences, which I think helps.
And that's what makes you a good coach. I always say to people, like, the best coaches I've ever worked with are the ones that don't think they're that good. Not because they're not confident, but it's just like they just know how much there is to learn. So if you're constantly learning, constantly improving, I think that makes you a good coach. I guess what I wanted to talk about mainly, because you're kind of in the same position I was, like being over in Australia for so long, seeing different styles of basketball, and then you've just come back to the States. You're now coaching at a high school. What are some of the main things that you've noticed, main differences, or anything that shocked you? What's the culture shock like, just basketball wise, coming back to the States?
Yeah, well, I guess when I was out here playing, we really didn't have anything to do with the high school level. I think I maybe went to like one high school game, so I didn't really have any idea what the level was even like. However, the last 3-4 years, through my previous job with Basketball Victoria, we would bring teams out here to play high school, some prep schools, some AAU teams. And to be honest, we would win most of those games by large amounts. And that wasn't anything to do with the level here. It was more to do with that we were bringing like select teams over, and we just had a lot of talent. But we also played very differently. The ball wasn't on the floor the whole time, and even when we were in Texas, we struggled defensively without a shot clock. Being engaged for that long. But we would just punish teams on the other end with early offense because we were so organized, and we're forced to be organized in the FIBA game because we have a 24-second shot clock or a 14-second reset. But I guess being involved on it on a day-to-day here, it's been eye-opening. I think the challenges that are happening in Australia are still happening here as well with AAU basketball, the Instagram. The need for these quick validation is the same with all athletes. We have challenges at every level, but I think it's just accelerated so much now with social media. Kids want instant gratification. I've seen some clips recently, not of our kids here, but some kids I coached previously, where the graphics and the animations almost make them look like like an Avenger through their highlight. And then when I go back and I look, it's like, oh no, they lost.
Yeah,
they lost the game. But if you were to just watch that 20-second or whatever it is, you would think like then they're about to be a draft pick. So that's a challenge. That's a challenge, and I think that's the same here. The high school stuff in Arkansas where we are is, we've been allowed to practice for a while, so we're definitely hit a little bit of a plateau. I said to you the other week on, we're ready to play someone, and that's coming up soon. But I just think it's not what I thought it would be, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I think these kids have more distractions and more challenges than what I thought it would be. Not only off the court, outside of school, but even in school. We've got a lot of athletes that are involved in multiple things. Some that are in the band, some that are one's doing track right now, so that's been it's not bad. It's just
different challenge.
Yeah, something else for me to navigate, which ultimately is going to make me better.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I always try to keep in. I always try to keep that perspective, because I think we're both really fortunate to have been a part of basketball at so many different levels and in so many different capacities. So players, as a star player, as a backup player, as a redshirt freshman that had the video games, like I've been a part of it every side. And then on the coaching side, different states, different countries, and every single one of those was a different challenge. So, I think I have these questions all the time. I get into this, so I know everyone else falls into it, but you'll watch a team from afar, you'll watch a practice from afar, and then you'll say, like, why aren't they just doing this? Like, why isn't this happening? I think I mentioned to you a team that we played in AAU, and I'm like, man, their players are way, like, individually so much better than our players, but our team offense was way better. And I was so frustrated, but I was only thinking about the problems that we have to deal with. And I said to you, I was like, yeah, maybe they're struggling just to get their kids to school. Maybe they're struggling just to get their kids to show up to practice. Whereas we have the kids that are the hard workers, they're showing up to practice. I'm like, he just can't walk in a straight line. So it's like you have different problems. And I think that's the fun part of coaching too, is like meeting the kids where they're at, meeting the coaching staff where they're at, and figuring out, like, okay, what can I add to this situation? One of my biggest pet peeves is how a lot of coaches, and I don't know what you want to call this. We typically say like an old school coach, but the more I see it, I'm like, young coaches have this problem too. When you think like, this is the style I want to play, I'm going to coach a fast pace. We're going to deny everything. We're going to press. We're going to get up, and we're going to do this. And it's like you try to bend these players into it, and sometimes you just don't have that. So I think the best coaches can kind of see what they have first, see the tools that they have in their tool belt, and then decide, like, okay, how are we going to build this house now if these are the only tools I have? Go ahead.
I think it's very important, pardon me, not to be judgmental, and I think, in my past, I've been asked to do a post-season audit of a semi-pro team in Australia or whatever it might be. And my response to be is, well, to do that effectively, you've really got to be in the inner circle. You've got to know what's going on in the day-to-day. You've got to know what's going on in practice, what's going on with, practice planning, video review, talk to the players, go to all the games. Otherwise, let's just call it what it is. Did you win enough games or not? Does all the playing group want to go to free agency, basically? So I've tried to be very, balanced when people say, oh, what do you think of this or what do you think of that? I always start with saying, well, I'm sure I don't know the whole picture, because I know people don't know the whole picture about the programs that I've coached in. And, even this past fall break, I was very, determined to get in the car, and we did some miles to go and watch multiple Division I practices. And a lot of those coaches had a great thirst for knowledge and also, just get a different lens on it. And they would ask me what I thought about their practice. And I would always start by saying, well, first of all, who am I to be able to comment on your practice? And I would always end it with, but it's always easy for me to say these things because I'm walking out the door and getting in the car and going back to my high school, right? So try not to be critical is what I would say. You need to be sympathetic first. And if you really do want to know, just go and talk to the coach.
Yeah.
Right. And ask him. I think that's one thing that has been pleasantly surprising here is a lot of coaches, we're going to another practice tomorrow. We're taking our team to one, so I think a lot of coaches here are still wanting to help and wanting to learn and wanting to share. So before judging, I think you've got to know the whole picture, because I'm sure not everyone knows the whole picture about your program as well.
Yeah, I think you touched on something important that I think links back to what you were talking about with that instant gratification and skills trainers. And I'm working on a video currently that's literally just called "Skills Trainers Aren't Real." And one of the through lines that I've been seeing a lot of in that industry is like they're solving a problem. So these skills trainers are solving a problem. So they're like, "Hey, I'm going to solve this problem for you." And it's like, you don't even know the kid that's watching this video, and if that's the problem that they're actually having. So one of them I was watching, this guy was like, the reason kids miss way too many step back threes is all this other, he brought up 20 reasons. And I was like, man, most kids miss step back threes because they can't shoot threes. Right. Like if you can't shoot, it doesn't matter. And then at the same time, if you can't go full speed to the basket and make a layup, well, the step back's never going to work because no one's having to guard your layup. So when I look at basketball holistically, I'm like, it's as simple as you want to make it. It's as complicated as you want to make it. And all these things are kind of like tying in together. The problems that we're seeing, a lot of it is coming from, unfortunately, like the adults, the coaches. It always does. Do you find that more so in Australia or more so in America, either one, or is it just the day and age that we're in?
Well, I found the skills trainers in Australia were becoming really prominent, to the point where people were retrofitting lots of buildings and
seeing a lot of that,
getting out, handing out business cards, whatever. And I'll say in isolation, like I used the skills trainer when I was a player at times. I think it takes a village to raise a child, as it does to grow a player. I think for it to be effective, there needs to be a collaborative approach. I think there's no way that a team coach is going to be happy with an individual's coach telling them something that is contradicting team philosophy. Right now, there's also different times to be working on that stuff. I love the saying of the summer's for you, but the season's for us. I think that's an awesome saying, and that's why in the summer maybe you're on your travel ball team or whatever it might be, or whatever it is, and you can play some different positions. But when you're in your league, and it might even be college or high school or even pro or semi-pro, you got to do what the team needs. I have no doubt that Draymond Green doesn't want to play the five. Don't want to do it. Like, no doubt. He even said the other day, if you do it, trade me, like jokingly. So it's like, but that's what you got to do for the team. So I think in isolation, skills trainers can cause a lot of problems, right? As can team coaches, definitely. But we've got to get to the point where it's like this, where we've got skills trainers working with teams, and it's like, well, what do you think this player needs to play more? And then we say this, okay, then let's go work on it. And that's before we even get to the points of, are the drills and skills and whatever we're working on, is it going to translate? Is it 50,000 cones, or is there real defensive reads or whatever? Before any of that, you've got to sit down and say, like, why are you doing this? I've got no problem with coaches being paid. I think we should be paid, right? But I think the sole reason, sometimes outweighs that, where it's just like, how many kids can I get through the door? A lot of the time it's just a workout. It's not actually skills training. I think it's really important for people to identify the differences. There's workout coaches and then there's skill coaches. And I think, skill coaches can really target what that individual needs. And to be honest, if you're doing that, you can't just go back to back to back to back to back. No. You've got to have that session. There's got to be, I did some skills sessions with professional players when I was in Australia, and it would start with collaboration before the session. What do you need? What do you think? Right. Okay. And we would formulate a plan together. Now, obviously, as a pro, you're a little bit more aware of what you need to work on. And then after the session, we would have reflection time. And we would talk about, well, we needed more of this, less of that. Let's watch a video, whatever it might be. But then you got to watch them perform. You got to watch the game.
See if it translates.
And, okay, so what did your coach tell you? Whatever it might be, as opposed to like, thanks, send it to me on Cash App or whatever it is, and like the next one's coming in.
Peace. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a workout guy.
Yep.
Sometimes you need a workout.
Yep.
But there's a big difference in my mind, and I think it's worldwide. It's not an American thing.
Yeah.
It's an Australian thing. Like, it is everywhere.
It's so interesting because as much as we talk, we haven't really spoken about this, and it's so funny because you're saying like a lot of the exact same wording, a lot of the exact same stuff that I say, and even some of the pro elite master trainers, whatever, you watch them and you're like, this is just a workout. You can just throw whoever in this workout. You're training Dante Exum the same way that you're training JJ Redick, that you would train Shaq. You're putting them all through the same workout, and it's not.
Right.
It needs to be individualized. It needs to be what the team needs within the team concepts. But you touched on a lot of things, and so there's a few points I wanted to bring up. One of them, the first one you said was it's becoming like pretty prevalent in Australia. I'm noticing there's a lot of people that we played against that were trash. There's a lot of people that you've coached or I've coached, and I know them, and I'm like, they're trash. They're not good. And not that they weren't good at basketball, or you have to be good at basketball to be a good coach, but I know you're not good at basketball, and your work ethic is trash, and you're not willing to spend the time to get better at something. What makes you think you're the guy to now teach kids and push kids forward? So that was one point. Is just like, there's some type of skill, there's some type of thing that you need to cross before you start teaching individuals. And I think you kind of made this point yourself, where I remember we played together in college, and you were like, I don't do defense. I don't do that. That's not my thing. But now I've seen you as a coach, and it's like one of the main things you're preaching is how to do it. So it's like you've been there as a player, but there's things that you can offer because you were a player that are going to be unique, but that's not what makes you a good coach because you're a player. So I guess that was.
Yeah, I think anyone can watch Again and Baker DVD and think it's time to pound the rock. That's one of my favorite sayings. It's like, I've watched this DVD. Let's invest in a small warehouse and let's get this going, right? But I before all that, whether you're had any success as a player, because even I think my playing career was like pretty average. In retrospect, I played in different countries, like that was good, but I think it goes back to the person side of it. There's some people out there that we just know aren't good people that are preying on people. It's like, we had teammates or opposition that we know they wouldn't come to practice, or they'd be doing this and that. They'd be, and then they're the ones that are trying to mold, these young kids. It's like, well, I know for sure no one would ever question my commitment. They might question my ability, but they might not, so that stuff kind of really bugs me about some of this. And then, connection to where they want to go, how many players have you coached, what circles are you moving in, is important. But I say this to all parents. We did a podcast on this at Basketball Victoria and I'm not sure how it works in America, but first of all, like, do they have insurance? What happens? What happens if the advice you're giving this kid results in an injury?
I talk about this stuff all the time. Like, It's just so thrown together.
Right. So do you have insurance, right? And because I did it for a period of time and I had sports insurance, right? So do you have that? Do you actually have an accreditation? Do you have like a coaching level? Are you connected to where they want to go? Do they come to your games? And is it the chiropractor thing where it's like, crack, see you next week?
Yep.
See you next week. Not, hey, we've got tangible
things. How do we fix this?
Yeah, right. And the reality is they're invested in keeping their business going, which so they should be. But a chiropractor should fix someone so they don't come back.
Yeah.
And I think skills trainers are in that chiropractor loop a little bit, where it's just like, come back. So I'm not saying it's all bad. There's good ones. I've benefited from some great ones as a player. You just got to do your research, find what works for you. And then the other side of it is, if you're going to go with this person, give it some time to work too. Like there's a lot of them that'll have 2 or 3 individual workouts with different people in a week. And it's
I know.
man, like that's confusing. That everyone's got their own different, and I had the same thing when I was head of basketball Victoria Vic Metro. We had, that program, for those that don't know, very storied, multiple guys in the NBA. During my time there, it was over 40 guys had gone to NCAA basketball or professionally, right? So, and I would talk to them about, right, who are you working with on your shooting? It's you, Darren. Okay, cool. You don't listen to anyone else. Or someone would say, I'm working with that guy. Okay. I would call that guy and say, how can we work together? So I'm not saying anything that's contradicting.
Yeah.
Right. So, and there was some times where I would have to steer them the other way and say, look, that's probably not the guy. Let's hook you up with someone else. But I think you can't go to 3 or 4 different people. You've got one person telling you hand position should be here, another one telling you feet position should be there. Like, you're not going to fix anything that way. But find someone you trust, get some reference checks, right? And then you've also got to, come up with a time frame of, well, we're going to do this for X amount of time, and then come out with what are some tangible outcomes that you want. Because effectively you're investing in your child or yourself for an outcome, right? Unless it's just for fun. And some parents, that's the beginning of like youth sport. If it is just for fun, go and do that. But don't come out of it going, we're going to get to the ACC or the SEC or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And you're right. I don't want to make it like skills training isn't good or individuals can't be good, or those trainers, they're all worthless. Because I vividly remember I was really fortunate to benefit from a lot of like really good coaches, individual coaches, professional guys. And also I learned some stuff from guys that weren't professional, but they were starting to get their business up, and they're like, can I train you for whatever? And I'm like, all right. And then you unexpectedly learn some things. I remember one very, very vividly that was, and this is kind of molded the way I thought about the game going forward, but I do this with kids all the time now of like, what is your goal? Like, so he just asked me, what's your goal? And I'm like, well, I want to lead the league in scoring. And he's like, okay, what were you averaging last year? And it was like 22. This is my first year overseas. It was like 22. And then he goes, okay, well, you're not shooting enough. Like he was looking at my stats. He's like, you're not shooting enough shots to average more than what you are. Like, you're pretty efficient. You're not going to score more points. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, okay, so if you shoot this many threes a quarter, if you shoot this many, and it just like kind of put some math behind it. So what you're talking about, tangible goals. And it was like, okay, so it's not about working on more moves. It's not about working on all these other things I thought I needed. I just wasn't shooting enough. So I'd have to go back and watch game film. And then it was like, where am I passing up shots? Where am I not running the court for an opportunity for a transition basket? Where am I not looking to pop so I can shoot a 3-pointer? It was just little things like that. And I'm like, man, I improved so much more from just that one session, but it just happened to be like a tiny piece of advice that really stuck with me. But I never learned anything from that guy ever again. And half the stuff we did was terrible and it was trash. But that one piece really stuck with me. So I do try to give all trainers, all coaches, like just that benefit of the doubt of like, you can learn something from bad coaches too.
100%. There's always something to learn. And, even just now I've learned that is the reason that my scoring average went down. Because you just weren't passing the rock anymore, man. Come on.
Cut through.
You're right. But you know what? Every time I go to a coach's clinic or even I watch a practice, I've got this little blue notebook at the moment that I've nearly filled up that, just in essence. And sometimes you go to a practice and you're just like, when I was young, I would be like, oh, I know that. Oh, yeah, cool. I'm getting nothing out of this. And when I say young, I mean young as in my coaching journey. Whereas now I'm like, it's got to be there somewhere. The nugget, what I'm trying to find has got to be there somewhere. And without fail, I always come out of a practice or a clinic or something with at least one thing that I know, you know what, like that's gold. And that's exactly what you've spoken about. Like the other day, I think I told you it was about when you like having a scrimmage scenario where it's, you got to validate your score with a stop.
Yeah.
So if you and I are playing, team blue versus team white, and it's first to 10, but you can only get the points that you scored on your scoreboard, and if you follow it up with a consecutive stop, and I think like that, I'm like, that's gold. Like, that's great. And sometimes it's something that you used to do and you just kind of forgot about it as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. And someone else is doing the work. Someone else has been trying this for 3 months, 5 months, 2 years or whatever. And it's like, oh, they've been trying it and it's something I always wanted to try. And this is how it worked for them. Yeah, I'm going to throw it in now. We can't try everything ourselves. I guess this kind of does transition into more of just the coaching side rather than, like we talked about the skill stuff for a while, individual trainers. That's a full video by itself. But yeah, with the coaching side of it, and you said you go to these clinics and you're always trying to find something to learn. How do you improve as a coach? Like, where do you go? Like, where do you go to learn? What do you do personally to learn and to stay sharp?
yeah, I think the first thing is you've got to actually have a serious conversation with someone about being your mentor.
Yeah.
Right. So I've got a couple, and I use them for different things. One I really go to for, culture type stuff, and then the other one I go to for more X's and O's type stuff. So I think you got to actually have that conversation, and they might change over time, but then I think you've got to continue to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, like moving from Australia to where I've moved here to try
Yeah.
this, to try this thing. So,
And just quickly, keep that train of thought, but just so I give some background, you were coaching at like the highest level you can really get to over there. Like the
right,
only other level up higher would be just an NBL head coach when there's 10 jobs. It was like you were as high of a level as you can get. You've taken a risk to be like, go start over and start at high school in America. So exactly what you're saying. It would have been very easy for you to just stay where you're at for the rest of your career. But you've moved around a lot. You've played all these different places, but now you're starting to do that same thing with your coaching.
right.
So when you're saying put yourself in uncomfortable positions, I mean, we had a lot of conversations about it. It was super uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still, we haven't played a game yet. We start soon,
Yeah.
but I will say, like, it's 100% been worth it, to do it. I think, yeah, go to practices, always ask why, and then try stuff. Try stuff. Don't be, and similar to what we spoke about with players, don't just try it once and go, that didn't work, and throw it out. So
Yeah, stick with it.
yeah, I've really been pleased with my practice observations since I've been here, with the desire for teams to run more conceptual systems offensively. And I think that does marry in with our conversation around some of these skills trainers, because I've had probably 3 Division 1 either head coaches or associate head coaches say to me in the last 3 weeks that they will not recruit low IQ players. And to the point where now they're starting to look, they're always going to look JUCO as well, but they're actually recruiting scouting and recruiting JUCO coaches
Okay.
before they scout and recruit the players. Because, like, I
Yeah.
know
Wow.
Corey, he's at such and such, he runs good stuff. I might go and look at his players.
Yep.
Whereas I'm looking at whoever, man, they just run terminal offense. I'm not picking any of their players. And they don't even cross them off the list. They're not one of that, not for us. So
It's that's
very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because so I've been, I don't even know if you've seen my second YouTube channel I do, but it's just daily upload. I use that as my research. That's how I get better. It's just like, I'm just going to ingest as much basketball as I can and try to break it down and see what sense I can make of it. We watched the Duke scrimmage, blue versus white. And then we watched a Michigan practice. And again, best players in the country. This is as elite of a level as you can get to in college. And some of the things that some of these players are doing, it's just like, man, like this is stuff you should have learned like you should have learned that we should have been teaching this stuff at such a developmental level, but now you're leaving it up to John Shire at Duke. Can't remember the Michigan's coach, but it's like you're leaving it for these coaches now. They're going to have to fix a lot of these problems before season comes around, and they will. They're elite at that. They will have these players ready. But when I'm now hearing you say that, and you're like, a lot of coaches are now just going to like, you give me a finished product so I can make him better. I'm the elite coach. These college coaches are like, I can put the cherry on top, but you got to get them halfway there rather than just starting completely over.
Well, the landscape of college just changes such that those coaches aren't given that time before they get fired. It's just like, it's like you no longer give them 4 years to recruit their guys and build their program. It's like, no, you get a new team next year, So, coaches don't have that time now. And I've heard, a few college coaches saying that they don't think they can fix poor shooting mechanics. They don't have
that Mark Pope.
Yeah, like I don't have the time.
Don't have time.
You've already got, how many ever 1,000 hours through your junior career building those bad habits. I can't fix you, So
on that video too, it actually got a lot of backlash, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, we don't need coaches should always be able to work on that and should always do that." And that's the part that a lot of people can't understand what you're saying, that the landscape has changed as such that Mark Pope does not have time to work on your mechanics. So if you haven't already been doing those things, like you probably don't have a chance with Mark Pope. Well, that's probably the same line of thinking for 90% of these other coaches.
Well, I think it's not saying he can't do it.
It's just not efficient. I might as well just recruit someone who can already shoot pretty well.
Yeah, saying he won't do it.
Yes.
At the end of the day, when they're spending, I think they can spend, if they opted in, I thought it was 26 million across athletics. So
yeah,
they might be getting 10 million or 11 million, whatever it might be, and they're probably paying him. I'm sure this is all public knowledge. Probably paying him, I don't know, whatever it is, a few million, and we're just going to persist with this guy while he tries to, shoot 11% from the three, and then it's the same argument of, some of these coaches say, I went to watch this recruiting event and I heard this parent that was, going crazy in the stands, and I'm not going to recruit a kid that's got a bad acting parent. Right. And then you hear all the people say, man, you're crucifying the kid, or you're stifling the kid because of the parent. No one should ever do that. And it's like, we're not telling you what's right or wrong. We're just like telling you what it is.
Yeah.
And that's just, no one wants those problems. They got enough problems. They got an AD going, why haven't you won
a championship?
Yeah. That's the nature of the next level. Having been involved in college, having been involved in pros, even back to my previous job, U18, U20 national titles, our program, the expectation is we had to win. We've won, I say we, but Vic Metro, we'd won 90% of titles.
Yep.
Ever in our country. So
didn't the girls get silver and everyone was talking about how trash they are?
Right. And they had five of their top 8 go out with injury throughout that campaign. Right. And it's, all of that happens again. No one cares. So our job as youth coaches is to somehow navigate, it's more challenging for us than it is for them, because theirs is win, 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 win. Whereas we still have to help these kids along the way, so, and to some extent, so does college. They're trying to help them become pros. They still fulfill all of the holistic development needs that high school does. They're still trying to help shape young men or women.
Yeah, they are. They don't. They are.
The good ones are.
No, you're right. But I think with NIL, it's muddied the waters a lot. So I am looking forward to like a little bit more structure around that. But
I love it.
At the end of the day, like very rarely can you be a kid that just doesn't tick all the other boxes and they're like, we'll still put up with the problems. You've got to be like a one of one, before they will.
Well, and the other thing is, how many of those can you have on your team?
Yeah, exactly. How many of those risks can you take? Well, the kid that's averaging 40 points in high school will risk it for him.
Right. Well, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And so a lot of what we're talking about now, I think it's always good to like give context for coaches. This is more an elite level. Like, obviously can't fix the shooting, we can't all that, but you're at high school. I'm at high school. A lot of the problems we thought we were going to deal with coming over here were like all these other things. But with high school, like there's some times where we're like, hey, this kid, he just doesn't have a really good home situation. So him being on the team, it's big for him.
Right.
So there's one roster spot for a really good kid, a hard worker, and just things aren't great at home. Then there's another kid who he's a senior. He's been here all of his other years and he's worked hard. We're going to finally put him on varsity. There's another roster spot. And it's like, there's some of these affordances that you probably give a little bit more at the lower level. I say lower level, but high school juniors, when you're coaching juniors, it's important to understand where you're at. And if it's not all about winning, if you're in a league that's everyone thinks it's about winning, everyone will say it's about winning. It's really not. It's about developing humans. It's about developing better people. Because if you do that, you're going to win more games.
Right.
If you make all the right decisions, build a good culture, do all the right things for the kids, like you'll win more games.
Yeah.
If you're sacrificing a lot of that to just play your best 2 or 3 kids and then forget about everyone else, like that'll get you so far. You get to the state tournament, you're going to run into a team that's doing it the right way. You're not going to win that game.
Look, I always say I have favorites. Yeah, and
what are your favorites? What are typically your favorites? What qualities?
Yeah, the kid that I can trust, and trust is built by turning up all the time. Doing the work, turn up to your best of your ability. When you're late, do you run into the gym or do you dawdle in? Those guys. But there are a lot of people that play favorites because it's it's their nephew or it's or it's something like that. Then that's a problem.
Yeah.
But I think building a team, you've got to think about all those factors.
And I think you and I, where our perspective comes in there is because we've been on the other end of that, where maybe we thought we were deserving because I'm doing what you're saying. And then you're giving this guy, you're just letting him do whatever. We've been the player on the other end of that. So I think now as coaches, I'm assuming this is part of where your perspective comes from. But now as coaches, it's like, I remember being that kid. I'm not going to say, if you win all the sprints, you're going to start. And then this kid wins all the sprints. I'm like, I got to start him. I got to stick with my word. I can't, if I'm laying that down as the culture and he's doing it, like you got to start awarding people that are doing what you're saying. I think a lot of times as adults, we say something to motivate kids and then don't realize like they're taking that home. They're living by that. You better hold up your end of the deal now. So if it's hard work and showing up, you better work hard and show up, because the day that you don't, like, you lose all those kids.
Yeah. And just recently we started drilling down a little bit more on our in practice statistics. But pardon me. So we've had one of our student managers just charting some stuff. We've tried to keep it as simple as possible. We've got getting lifted up on a shot fake, because we're trying to stay down, blow-bys, missed blockouts, turnovers. And just when we started talking of it, I put a list of probably 30 things that I was like, we need to chart all this. And then we started talking. I was like, well, what can we consistently commit to charting?
Yeah.
As soon as you stop doing it,
they start can.
Yeah, all the credibility's gone. All the credibility's gone. So we started small. We started with we've been doing it as a sample to see how effectively can we collect the data before we even make them run for it. So we're doing it sort of silently, I guess, at the moment, to make sure that it's effective, because of that exact reason, that if kids are surprisingly astute. They can see through the BS. Basically, they can see through it. And some people said to me, how do you think you're going to go coaching a totally different cohort in a totally different country, because although I've been and coached in different countries, I was often taking Australian kids to go and play games.
Yeah.
So it was always our kids. And I just said, look, I think as soon as they know that you know what you're talking about and that you care, you're fine.
Yeah. Basketball, it's like a universal language.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So I've just got one last question. If you're happy to end it pretty soon.
Sure.
What's something that you've learned this week?
Yeah.
If anything.
Yeah. I think we've had, like I said, I think we're up to like our 50-something practice. And I think the importance of, even though we understand the importance of doing the basics daily, like I love doing my defensive fundamentals before, we start practice. So we'll do some station work, whether it's verticality or, we might put a concept. So we'll defend cross screen, down screen, or whatever it might be. And we'll do some stations. And then we'll hit shell, and all of these things we as coaches know super important. But how are you going to keep selling that message to the kids that it's super important? So I have learned this week that is important. And then on top of that, we've had some kids that have a little bit banged up, and that just saying to them, go to the trainer, isn't enough. Like there needs to be a follow-up. What did the trainer say? So we've got a bit of a protocol around some correspondence back from the trainer, whatever it might be. So understanding that you still are dealing with developing humans. I
laughed when you said that, because we have a kid, our best player, plays football, quarterback, best player on the team there. He just won't ever take a day off. He won't take a drill off. He won't, nothing. So when he's injured, you won't know. If you just say, you want to play? You want to go out there? He'll go. So you have to do the same thing. Hey, go to the trainer. And then you almost have to follow him in there, because he'll just do a loop and come back and be like, yeah, said I was good. So I laughed when you said that. Something I've learned, and it's bugged me for 4 years, and I just never took the time to like dive in, because it didn't really matter. So verbiage to me isn't too important when you're speaking of actions or how to defend something. Like, as long as you know what to do, if you put me in that position, I could learn it really quickly. That Serbian off-ball action that they were running for so long, it's been 4 years ago, I think, when I first saw it. I only learned this week. It's that stack action that everyone's running in the NBA now.
Right.
So I learned what that was. I learned what stack was, the 77, which is just a double drag screen.
Double drag, yeah.
Double drag, and then three across. I learned about the three across offense too. So I thought that was just the 4 out, 1 in motion concepts. It pretty much is. And this is what I mean. Like, the name of stuff doesn't really matter, because if you know spacing and the concepts, you can kind of run anything. But yeah, I found out what the three across offense was. So that's what I did for my study this week, learning some terminologies, because that's the part of my game I think is the weakest. I can tell you what it looks like, but when I'm trying to communicate ideas to people, I find that I have to spend a lot of time explaining it, where if I can just be like, oh, they run that three across action, blah, blah. So that's something I've been trying to get better at as a coach.
Well, the verbiage one is, as you know, at Basketball Victoria, we actually had like a 20 or 30 page document, which was like our vocabulary document. It was forever growing to the point of ridiculousness. But, I was at a practice the other day, and they called it what I thought was a grenade handoff. They called it a bomb. And I was like, so whatever it is, it's like just, uphill, just go that way. Basically.
Trail and delay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think all of that's good to know, though. It's all good to know.
Yeah. And for me, it's just sharpening, tightening up, and just seeing it. Once I see it once, it'll stick with me forever. But one thing I just avoid is like diving into why is something called this or what is it called? Because for me, it's like I've just seen basketball so much. Like, pattern recognition is pretty good now. I can see an action. I can understand how I would defend it. But I've started realizing throughout the years, not everyone's like that, especially when I was a player. And I'm just like, how can you guys not So I'm like, communication is important. And especially now that I'm doing this YouTube thing, I'm like, you know what? If I can just put some names to things that I'm seeing a lot, it will click in people's heads a lot more than me being like, oh, this action, you can space here, you can do this, this. And they're just like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. So, yep, that was my homework. Is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about, or any final words, anything?
No, I think just, on the list of stuff that you'd sent through earlier is, I think just to congratulate everyone that still is coaching, and I think there's a lot of people that, aspire to get to a position where it is a job for them. And even as we know, those that get to that point, there's very few of them that actually make enough money to do that, but I think, in today's climate where you are dealing with all the things that we spoke about with, Instagram or whatever it might be, parents are becoming, more and more challenging. Kids are doing more and more things. Like I said, they might be in 2 or 3 clubs at your level, like your school or whatever it is. And, and then the trainer side of things and all of that, I just think, keep fighting the good fight is sort of what I wanted to say to everyone, because, someone has to help young people dream. And that's what, ultimately that's what coaching young people is about.
Yeah, I like that. I always say, like, we always need more coaches, and, you're developing humans, trying to turn them into better people. So the more people we get like that, using basketball as a tool to, challenge young people, to teach them life lessons in a safe environment. It's like the number one thing that keeps me going in coaching when I have those bad days. We lose sight of the goal. So if you keep the main thing, if you keep that your focus, honestly, a lot of decisions you have to make, a lot of tough decisions you have to make, become pretty easy, I think. So I think that's super important. All right, cool, man. I appreciate it, and I think it went well.
Is that
What's that? Huh? Stack,
man?
Oh, stack. Yeah, is that what it is? Is that what you?
Haven't you seen him doing that? The guards?
I can't be bothered, man. There's too much stuff going on. I'm too busy watching the kids on the sideline like this.